transformative education, how we help empower students and working professionals, feel free to reach out to us at programs@mygreatlearning.com. Or you can also go visit our website at mygreatlearning.com or email us as well. With that, let's get started. Today. It's an exciting, we have an exciting speaker here, a very accomplished woman, a repeat entrepreneur, and someone who's been making great strides in the space of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So welcome, Bindu Reddy.
Thank you, Milind. Nice to be here.
Yep, it's a pleasure to, and it's an honor to have you here. So before we get started on this topic of AI as a service, as people are just joining us, as they're joining in, let's do this. Let me, usually what I do is I try to get a quick pulse of what's the background of people who are joining us on this webinar. So I usually ask this one question to get a sense for what's your comfort level with data science, with AI. So if you had to pick your comfort level with AI, data science, could you tell us on YouTube, on the chat, could you say one, if you are a beginner who's just getting started reading up? Could you say two, if you are somewhat familiar, you looked at some course online, you have got familiar with AI, data science, understand what it can do, how you can do it. And press 3 if you are pretty proficient, if you're an expert, right? So 1 is beginner, 2 is intermediate, and 3 is you're a complete, an expert in the field. Could you chat on the YouTube chat? What's your comfort level with AI and data science? All right, I think I see some answers coming in. Well, let me just check what people are saying here. I think it's roughly, people are, I think, in a 1 or 2 categories. So most of them seem to be, beginners just getting started, somewhat familiar with data science, with machine learning, which is great. So what we can do is, we can curate our questions accordingly. And by the way, if you have any questions for Bindu, if you want to learn anything about AI as a service, feel free to chat us on the YouTube chat, and we'll take your questions up. So with that, let's get started. So Bindu, as I mentioned, she's extremely accomplished, a repeat entrepreneur, but more importantly, she's been in the space of AI and machine learning, and she's done some remarkable things, and not just at big companies where she's been an entrepreneur within the company, an intrapreneur, having started new initiatives, but also, having started companies of her own. So, she was leading the products for Google Cloud at Google, Google Apps. But from there, she went on to start her own company in the social media space with Post Intelligence, which got snapped up by, Uber, which I know is not a easy thing. Uber is very picky about whom they acquire. But right after that, she went on, looks like the entrepreneurial bug never stopped, because she went on to join Amazon AWS and start initiatives there as well. The Amazon Forecast, a product that you all are familiar with, Amazon Personalized. She literally stood it up and launched it. And I think that was also the genesis of where this idea of AI as a service has started taking shape in the industry. Everyone now, from your Google, who's been talking about auto ML, to Amazon, who's providing all these machine learning as an API service. Azure, of course, is not to be left behind, and of course our very own Bindu here as well. The entrepreneurs are also innovating in this space of AI as a service. Bindu now has started this company Abacus, which again, if you look at the lineup, and she can tell us more about it. But what I am particularly impressed by is the who's who in the Silicon Valley. Everyone from Eric Schmidt to Deep Nishar to Ram Shriram, Jerry Yang. It's like a huge lineup of whoever's the people we hear of in the Silicon Valley have been backing this startup, have been investing in this startup. So I'd love to hear more from Bindu, but I'm sure there's something there with what Abacus is doing. And it's also testament to where I think this whole field of AI as a service is evolving. If you all had tuned into what happened with Snowflake and the series of uh, uh, IPOs that are happening on software as a service, this I feel is the next evolution in that space. Where if software as a service is a great business model, I think this is the one that's think of this as software as a service, SaaS on steroids. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bindu again, and would love to get started. Bindu, before we get started, though, you are right now in
Thank
California.
you so much for that very kind description. Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely.
Very glad to be here.
It's all well deserved. Bindu, before we get started, though, you're in California, and I know I was just chatting with you a little bit back. With all the wildfires raging there, and in the midst of this pandemic, how is your company able to manage this? Is everyone back at the office now, or is everyone still working from home?
When the whole COVID quarantine started, we were a really close-knit company. We had a great office in the middle of San Francisco, and everybody, used to have lunches, used to have TGIFs. We were, it was a lot of fun. And a startup, the culture really matters, and to us, the culture really mattered a lot. But unfortunately, since it started, we were like, okay, 14 days and we'll be back. Now it's 6 months in, and then I think things have just gotten worse in California. We've got insane wildfires. Some of the days are orange. I don't know how many of you guys saw that. Guys and gals saw that. All of San Francisco was orange for a couple of days. It's it's almost apocalyptic, as I say. We're waiting for Superman to show up anytime soon to help us all. I have no idea, but things this week is okay. It's getting a little bit better.
Okay, well, I pray, and I'm sure, as you said, things seem to be getting better. So hopefully, back to your culture, I'm a big believer of that. That the best work happens when the best minds come together. So I hope everyone can get back to the office, because you guys are building something great, and I would love to make sure nothing comes in the way of it.
Let's hope so.
On that note, Bindu, with Abacus, it's spearheading this whole movement towards AI as a service, right? And a lot of us, especially in this audience, who are just getting their feet wet in the space of AI, data science. They are trying to sit back and trying to understand. So, what is this movement? What is this whole new field? So, could you help give us an idea especially for the novices amongst us? What is AI? How would you define AI as a service?
Sure. So, I think what we want to think about is kind of like, you actually, framed it really well when you talked about Snowflake a little bit. Say a decade or so ago, right? People basically, how did they build a website? How did they build any kind of software? They had to go and basically rent some servers from somewhere, buy their own servers, and basically start building all of the software packages you need on that server. So you started with a machine, you started building the software packages on that machine, and then you started building on top of those software packages all the applications that you needed to build. So it would usually, and just to build a little website, and I used to be in a company called Upwork almost a decade ago, just to build a website, which would probably take about 3 or 4 engineers today, used to take like 40 or 50 engineers. And it would take forever, and there'd be a lot of issues, and you would have to pay millions to companies like Oracle and all of these big storage companies to buy large databases and large software. That was a decade ago. Now let's fast forward to 2020. What do? How do you start a company? You basically go to AWS to take out your credit card, swipe your credit card, and you get started, right? And you've got your machines. You can buy machines per second, per hour, whatever. You have a bunch of services you can use. You don't have to set up your own Oracle database. You can simply use Amazon's Oracle service instance. Just click a button, and suddenly you're saving data, and you're not paying millions of dollars for the database. You're paying literally 10 cents for every single write, right? Or 1 cent. So what's happened because of that is this transformation over the last decade of companies kind of building on top of these services, and therefore just being able to accelerate dramatically. The example I like to give is Netflix. Netflix completely is what we call a cloud native company, right? They never built anything on their own. They built on top of AWS, and because of that, they were able to accelerate dramatically. So obviously, over $100 billion right now. Of late, Salesforce is doing that. So pretty much all your big $100 billion companies were built on the cloud in some ways. Pinterest, Airbnb, Uber, all of these companies. So what's the next generation? So the next generation is not just building your application. It's basically trying to say, hey, what is the next generation application going to look like? And there are many strong indicators to believe that the next generation application is going to be actually a string of machine learning models. So today's applications are rule-based, right? They're deterministic. If something happens, you do something. Tomorrow's applications are going to be powered by a bunch of machine learning models, which are going to make decisions in real time based on data that you get. Let me give you an example, right? Let's go back to our favorite Netflix. Today, Netflix over the last decade, why is it as good as it is? A large part of Netflix is, the heart of it is their recommendations algorithm. We all know this. When you go back to Netflix, what do? You see trending, you see popular, but all of that is personalized to who you are, right? Go back to YouTube. Actually, we are probably streaming on YouTube. And if any of you are big YouTube power users, 70% of your YouTube consumption comes from YouTube Next. YouTube Next is this recommender algorithm, which is what you see, the video you see after this video finishes, right? And so machine learning is beginning to take off, and it's probably going to become very universal and prevalent. And as it becomes universal and prevalent, it's the same analogy applies. You don't want to go off and build everything from scratch. So if you want to build, let's say, something like the YouTube recommender system today, what are you going to do? You're going to go off, maybe try using TensorFlow. You're going to build your model, and then you're going to build a bunch of modules around it so that you can actually go off and put it on your application servers and make it work. That takes anywhere between a year, 2 years, 10, 15, 20 people. AI as a service basically turns that all around. It's the ability for you to kind of plug and play AI models or ML models into your applications, much like you plugged and played your database, or much like you plugged and played your machines. So at a very high level, that's how I would think about AI as a service.
I love that. I love how you took us back 10 years and walked us through how different systems have evolved. I still remember, you're absolutely right. You mentioned about. By the way, I didn't know your first job was at Upwork. That's pretty cool because
it was a biotech company, but I was at Upwork. Yes, Upwork is I don't know how many of the viewers know it. It's like the top open source freelance marketplace, and at that time, it was built as the eBay of services.
Wow. Yep. No, and they are such a great company. I've used them. And I'd like to hold on to that thought because Upwork these days has a lot of data scientists and programmers on it. So I'd love to come back to that around what's the future for these very freelancers now with the other service. But before that, I really liked how you paint the whole picture. That look, back then during the formative stages of Upwork. Even building a website would mean getting your own server, getting your own database, right? And now the world has evolved into, well, you need to build an application. Well, just string a bunch of things together. And I love the word you use, string machine learning models together, right? And so that part, by the way, I've been, my kids are in elementary school, and I kid you not, I was, they've been becoming familiar with just building a website, which was, back when I was graduating, building a website was took insane amount of work. Uh, so it's just
Yep.
amazing how easy
Yeah, and
to
now
use
somebody in
tools have
elementary
become.
school is doing it. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
So it's awesome. But I like how we use that analogy to say, well, here's where it's going to go next, right? Which is just as how people today are stringing together, get me an Oracle database from here, get me the payment service from Stripe, get me
Yep.
the website
Exactly.
hosting service from WordPress. Well, but now the next level is that's becoming table stakes. And the competitive mode, you give the example of Netflix, for companies is increasingly going to be, right? You also talked about how YouTube, 70% of what we watch on YouTube, by the way, I didn't know that 70% of what people are seem to be watching on YouTube is based on what some machine, not a human, and definitely not you, but a machine recommends that people
Yep.
click on. And that seems to be the competitive mode for companies if they want to innovate, whether it's a big
Yep.
company or a small one. That's where AI as a service has a role to play. Um, this is great. And on that note, Bindu, we also seem to have folks who come from various backgrounds. In fact, increasingly people who come from, say, a non-tech background, folks in the
Yep.
healthcare industry, in the financial services industry. So as you're seeing companies increasingly adopt this AI as a service, is there any one industry that kind of stands out, or are you seeing this adoption happening across the ecosystem of companies?
So, I mean, to be honest, the industry which adopted, I would say, machine learning more faster than anyone else, minus the big tech, of course. I mean, it's obvious, like Google and Facebook and Amazon have taken a very AI first approach. I like to say, and it's like pretty much there every time I talk to any of our customers, that one of the big reasons um, Apple and Google and Amazon are at the valuation that they are, the $2 trillion valuation, is because they've taken an AI first approach, right? Because there is a virtuous feedback cycle which kicks in. And people don't realize what the power of machine learning is until you see that. Just recently, we had a customer who like tried out an A/B test with, one of our models. It was a recommendation model, and they literally saw 25%. I kid you not, a 25% increase in their revenue per user just based on one model. So deep tech, of course, has adopted it in a very big way. But the other sector which has adopted machine learning quite a bit, and it's a kind of a double-edged sword, has been finance, right? I mean, obviously, a lot of our banks use some machine learning model. Obviously, hedge funds, of course, are right up there in terms of like trying to really crunch numbers, predict stock prices, even with ML models. I say for banks and for finance companies, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because unlike big tech, which has managed to keep up with the kind of the evolution and the innovation that is happening in AI, moving, I would say, from kind of what we call classical machine learning models, the typical stuff of like how do you fit a line or how do you fit a curve using something like logistic regression, to like today's world of neural networks. Well, big tech has kept up with it. Banks have actually suffered from a very interesting phenomena. They started early, they adopted early, but they adopted kind of the what I would call a little bit of an old-fashioned approach early. And now they're struggling in some ways to move to the modern deep learning techniques and kind of move quicker than they ought to be. They're actually getting there, so it's not too bad. But finance, I would say, is an industry which, while it is adopted machine learning, they're not moving quickly. On the other hand, if you look at digital media and e-commerce, even though they're in some ways very old school because they don't have that big of a tech bench, they are actually beginning to adopt kind of like the more modern kinds of AI techniques for things like churn reduction, user engagement, revenue. So I would say these are the two industries which are interesting in the way they've adopted this.
Awesome. No, you're absolutely right. We had in a previous talk, we had the global head of AI for JP Morgan, Apur Saxena, talk about the how AI is being adopted in finance, and you're absolutely right. While now they have all these tools, thanks to Abacus and other companies, thanks to AWS, GCP, and so on. uh, there is still a little bit of that, a lot of that actually old-fashioned approach, and I think it's because of the baggage that also comes with that industry, right? As we
Yeah.
all know, industries in finance, in healthcare, in manufacturing, they still have these legacy mainframe systems, and
Yeah.
for them to just overnight say, hey, let's move on to start using all these awesome AI as a service, as much as we'd love to have them get started immediately, I guess it's
It's
just taking
difficult.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it's good to know, and this is, by the way, something we also have a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. So the fact that you brought up that, look, there's industries like digital media, e-commerce, which seem to be paving the path for how you can use these AI as a service, these various AI APIs. They seem to be pushing the envelope on it. So that's good to know from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Um, uh, Bindu, tell me this, on that note, because I recall at that last conversation with Apur, he was
Mhm.
talking about how he also, just like you, had worked at these big companies at, Google Cloud. He was helping spearhead a lot of AI as a service at Google Cloud. So, and you've done the same at Google, and then went on to start similar initiatives at Amazon. So as you look at that landscape, there are these big three guys, Azure and
Yeah.
AWS and Google, throwing so much money at building these ready to go services. And then we have Abacus and all these others like you who are saying, well, we are going to also help innovate in the space.
Yeah.
How is that landscape evolving? Do you think these big cloud in the cloud wars, one of these guys will say it's a winner take all? I'm going to just build every single AI algorithm out there, and I am the one-stop shop for
Yeah.
AI as a service. Or do you think it'll evolve in a different way, where Abacus and others will have an innovation that is different from what the cloud players are
Yeah.
innovating on?
It's a very good question. Of course, as you can imagine, I've thought about it a lot. And I wanted to actually give you the same kind of analogy. Let's go back a little bit in the past and look at, I would say, the evolution of enterprise software. We started with the king of enterprise software being Oracle. And the reason Oracle was Oracle is, of course, it had their database, which was their flagship product. But if anybody goes to Oracle's website, you'll see that they have 200 or 300 products, not just the database, right? And they had a big sales force, and they would use the sales force to get into a particular company, sell them the database, but then start selling all of this other enterprise software products. Now, while their database was A1, most of their other products were kind of D minus. I mean, they weren't great. And people still bought them because you had the purchase order open. You kind of had a way to get software from Oracle already. It was easy, right? And then over time, what happened was the clouds. Now there's Amazon, there's Azure, there's Google, as you mentioned. And the cloud does three things very, very well. And that's why it's going to be phenomenal. We're just getting started, right? One, as we said, you take your credit card, you swipe it, you get going. The second thing is it's super simple for you to use a very plug and play type of mechanism inside your enterprise, as long as it's sitting on that cloud. So if you are using Amazon and you want it, and Amazon itself, right, Amazon Web Services or even Google have about 300 different services. I mean, I can't even remember the names of our own services from before. And the idea is you start with S3, you start with EC2. So you start with something for compute, you start with something for storage, but then you want to be able to use some of their other services, right? So you want to plug and play these other services. Now, but the issue, very similar to Oracle, is Amazon also has a few really good services, but then there is the long tail of what I would call mediocre services. And for you as a consumer, just like how consumers today, where you can go and buy everything you want at Walmart today, and you may not be getting the best of anything, or you could go to Amazon.com and you could pick out whatever you like, pick out from reviews what's the best thing, and pick out the best products. Very similar to that consumer buying strategy. I see the enterprise buyer doing the same. Instead of having to buy everything from Amazon, you want to buy a few good services from Amazon, but the best of breed from whoever is making the best of breed service. Because from your point of view, it's as easy to use an Amazon service as it is to use, say, a startup service, right? Because both of them are sitting on Amazon, both of them can access your data, which is on AWS. So the cloud allows for that plug and play. So not only can you scale, you can plug and play, which I think is a huge win. And the final thing about like startups like us, and you said they're the big three, right? Once you go into one cloud, it's very difficult for you to move from like AWS to GCP to Azure. But startups actually operate on all three clouds. So it's a multi-cloud strategy, right? So there is a play, and the biggest IPO of the, I would say, of the century in terms of software was a couple of days ago. And who are they? They're a cloud data warehouse. They're not Amazon. They're not GCP. They're not Azure. They're Snowflake. And Snowflake basically did just that. Their biggest cloud data space, best of breed. People love it because the product actually works. So I see actually a big opening for startups to be cloud infrastructure startups in AI, analytics, databases and stuff. And of course, we're one of them.
Awesome. I love that. So that looks like the mantra is best of breed. And you're so right. First of all, you're right with what happened with Snowflake, just in the very first day, maybe in a couple of hours, going to 120% of whatever their IPO price was. And by the way, the IPO price was supposed to be pretty high to begin with. It's just testament to what you're saying that, look, yes, there's Google, GCP, yes, there's AWS, yes, there's the other big gorilla of Azure. But make no mistake, what people are looking for is a multi-cloud. And that's where, these three are never going to talk to each other. And if a company innovates and provides that multi-cloud service, that layer that can talk to all three, and to your point, be the best of breed in an area. Like say, you build the best darn recommendation system ever, right? And sure, Google can do it. Sure, AWS can do it. Sure, Azure can do it, right? But that's not their core competency. They are focused on compute, storage, right, as you mentioned. And in fact, if anything, what I'm seeing is they welcome, and Snowflake is again a good testament of that, they welcome these other services from startups, which are best of breed, to be on their platform. So this is also inspirational for the rest of us here who are budding entrepreneurs trying to look at how we can innovate by building our own service on the cloud. Bindu, you mentioned something about plug and play, that it's this AI as a service, especially what Abacus is building, is so plug and play, and I think there's something there as well, because I can tell you, you mentioned that GCP has some 300 services. I think that's an understatement. The last I checked on AWS, it just boggles me. At one point, I'm just completely confused, and it's so hard for me to figure out what to use and how to get it all together. Could you? Is there some? I know you had shown me something around plug and play and how easy it is to use. Is there something you could show us on to help us explain the power of this plug and play?
Of course, happy to do so. Here we go. I just wanted to show you. So you can go to Abacus.ai at any point and request a free trial. We're happy to give you one. It's free of charge. And we also give you some free compute to play around with things. Fundamentally, what we're talking about here, this is the logged in version of the app. You can, of course, like I said, go to Abacus and check it out. What we're helping you do is we're helping you create models and create deep learning systems for any of these use cases. So as a company, we're very use case focused. What we're trying to say is, look, AI for the sake of AI is not that interesting for most companies, right? It could be interesting for research purposes, and we kind of do research as well, but it's not that interesting if you are, if you're a company and you're looking to say, how can AI help me? You're always thinking about what use case can it solve? So first of all, we kind of anchor you towards some of the use cases that you can actually solve using AI. Things like recommendations, helping you fight fraud and security, helping you forecast stuff, like help you manage your inventory for marketing and sales, help you score your sales leads and so on. So you can pick any of these use cases, and it'll walk you through how to like set up the model, how to set up your data, and how to set up your deep learning system as you do it. You also, if you're one of those people who are really a very savvy ML expert, you know how to build your own TensorFlow 2.0 model, that's fantastic. You can plug in and play your model right here in the system. I want to show you how the power of something like this very quickly by showing you a couple of very quick things, right? One is once your data is in, it walks you through the data. It's really easy. You can connect to existing systems. So you can connect to GCP or S3 or BigQuery, wherever it is, and then it starts taking your, kind of bringing your data for model building. So very similar to that, the plug part. So how do you plug it? You just simply connect your data, and then you can play it, as I mentioned. And the way you train models is really simple. It is really focused on kind of your skill level in some ways. If you're a business analyst, you don't want to care about how to create the models. You can use a few business rules here and configurations to just tell the system how to train the model. But let's say you're somebody who is, I would say, let's say beginner or intermediate data scientist, not somebody who can create their own TensorFlow model. You can then come into the system and tweak all of these parameters, which goes into a deep learning model. Things like your dropout rate, your batch size, history length, prediction set, step size. So it's very important for us to give you those levers, especially if you understand what the levers can do. You can come in, and once you have those foundation, fundamentals, kind of how each of these, levers can help you actually create a better model, you can tune and tweak things. And then once you have your models built, it's really simple.
Bindu,
Yeah.
Bindu, sorry to interrupt, but is this something that you could share on the screen? Because I know you had showed me some of these plug and play models, which I thought were pretty neat.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if that
Sorry,
was something you were
can you
sharing.
see my screen right now, right?
I am not able to see the screen.
Oh, I see. Sorry. I've been thinking.
All right.
I
Because
am
I know
so sorry.
you were showing me this thing
Yeah.
where I found it pretty neat, and I thought it was very different from how I use services from AWS, and that's why I
Of
really
course,
wanted
yeah.
to.
I was under the impression I was showing you the screen. That was my bad here. Just to show
No
you that.
worries, no worries.
Yeah, there you go. This is this is the various different use cases that I mentioned. The plug and play part of this, which is your ability to hit your to plug and play your deep learning model. But let me show you what I was just talking about. This idea of like being able to train your own models, but also be able to set kind of your own options. So let's assume you're somebody who's a data scientist who understands kind of the basic data science fundamentals, who understands how to like think about things like dropout rate, batch rate, batch size, learning rate, and so on. You can actually go here, use this interface, connect your data using a data connector, really simple. So you're plugging your data, and then you can actually, set these things. So you can actually set a size for your batch size. You can set history length. You can use various different loss functions. So you're able to kind of tune and tweak and actually build multiple models really, really quickly. So you can actually start experimenting with different things and start understanding what your data is telling you, but also kind of like how to build those models and how to get the best metrics. So, with a kind of, I would say, foundational understanding of the data science fundamentals, as well as deep learning fundamentals, you're off to the races, right? You're building multiple different models, you're comparing these models, you're like totally leveraging your data. And then finally, you're also able to easily kind of look at it from a basic common sense point of view and look at the predictions. Like here's a model which is doing, say, time series forecasting. That's what you're seeing here. You're able to see, hey, this is the past historical time series, and this is what the model is predicting. This green line here is the prediction. The blue line there is the actual data as it transpired. And immediately, look, this model is doing well because it's doing a really good job of capturing that data shape. So yeah, you can go anytime or get a free trial and get going.
No, I love, and Ben, if you don't mind, could you just share your screen? I like that screen that you had where you had different use cases, and I found that pretty powerful. Because as you were showing it, if you can just click on the part where you had these different use cases. Yeah,
Yeah.
So this one, I think I like this a lot because as you were describing it, there were questions streaming in. So Fahad was asking, well, I'm from the construction industry. How
Yeah.
would you apply this for construction projects? I think Harsh was, Nokulunga was asking about how it's being used in a global supply chain management. I
Yeah.
think SR had a similar question. So looks like folks are coming from various backgrounds, right? And I see that trend here where people have built a lot of domain expertise in manufacturing, retail,
Yeah.
healthcare, construction, what have you, and they are looking at AI. We are hearing about it constantly everywhere about how it's changing the world. However, we are not the software computer science grads, who
Yeah.
can just jump into an AWS and from there, thousands of different options, figure out what needs to be picked. But what we do understand, though, is our domain, right? If I'm in manufacturing, I understand what it takes to innovate on the assembly floor. If I'm in oil and gas, I know what it takes to go out there and drill in an offshore site. And if we can look at AI as a use case, right?
Yeah.
AI as a service for a certain use case, like how you portrayed it here, I think that makes for a very powerful combination where we bring the domain expertise that people have amassed over the years and these best of the breed techniques, such as you mentioned about all the regression techniques and the predictive techniques and so on. That's when magic happens. So I love how you focus on, focusing on, let's focus on the use case, right? AI is a tool to get you there, but let's help figure out, how to apply it in your industry.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the questions are very relevant. Yes, you want to think about, like, in your industry, where are the points where you are collecting data, and what can the data tell you? What is the insights? What are the patterns? What are the predictions? The supply chain question is a really great one, right? The whole supply chain is usually based on kind of predicting the future a little bit, because you have to be able to predict how much of something you want to make in the future so that you can sell that out. And so the supply chain has a lot of places where you can optimize the supply chain to get more efficiencies, to reduce your inventory, but also fulfill your demand correctly. So all of those use cases around demand forecasting, for example, the reason why we focused on that quite a bit is just to help you optimize your supply chain a lot. If you can tell exactly how much of a particular product you can tell you sell at a particular location at a particular time, you're off to the races. By the way, just so you know, Amazon's big deal is the demand forecasting. They have, I think, over 2,000 people working on this, because it's so important for them to be able to predict the future in terms of how much of something they'll sell in the future. Similar to that, for construction, you want to be thinking about anything you want to do around prices, right? Is there any price sensitivity in your business? Do you want to predict prices? Do you want to predict prices of, like, what is the right price that you want to sell something at, or what is the right price you want to buy something at to maximize your profitability? All of these things kind of fall into the domain of machine learning. And once you look at your custom domain that you are focused on, you want to then isolate all the places where you can apply machine learning, and then think about how to do so using this use case kind of point of view, which which we are obviously big fans of.
Great, great. No, and I see as you brought up supply chain, looks like folks from other industries are also streaming in their question. I have Dolar talk about, well, I'm in hospitality. I'd love to know how I can use this stuff for hospitality. Toyin is talking about, well, I'm in the TV station space. I'd love to bring this in there. So what we can do, guys, is given the short time, I wish you could have had Bindu talk to us for the whole day. But given the short time, I would encourage all of you. One is to go to Abacus.ai, check out what use cases they have. I'm sure they are constantly building more and more use cases. And secondly, if you have any other questions, reach out to us. Programs at mygreatlearning.com, and we can compile these questions. We can reach out to Bindu as well. And we also have our own industry mentors who are constantly getting people to do these, apply AI and data science as part of our programs. For example, we have a program coming up, with the MIT faculty on applied data science. It's a boot camp. where it's a lot of it is exactly this, which is let's take a use case in the industry and let's teach you the fundamentals on how you can apply various machine learning techniques, various data science techniques for these very use cases, right? So reach out to us, and we have our experts as well, and of course we always can reach out to Bindu and get her help in answering how you can apply AI in your field. um, with that, Bindu, as you were showing us this plug and play, there were an interesting set of questions that were coming up. A question from Vishal is around, look, you showed this plug and play. It almost looks like a human replacement, right? So what does that mean? Does it mean that what should we exactly be? Because by the way, at Great Learning, we keep preaching the mantra that you got to upskill yourself. You got to upskill. You got to learn these technologies, understand how to use them, right? So the question is, well, so what does that mean for us? As a data scientist, if you are just doing everything plug and play, is that a role for us?
Yes. I mean, so here's again, I've been giving analogies, or I've been going to the past all the while in this session. I'll give you the same story. Imagine when the cloud first came out. Remember, I told you we needed 40 people to build our initial version of Upwork, and now probably you can build it with a handful of people. And there was a lot of kind of hand wringing. I mean, whenever there's new technology, people are always kind of like unhappy, in some ways saying that, oh, maybe, is there a role for humans? The short answer is a resounding yes. And, there are three ways to think about this. The first way to think about this is, think of Abacus and services like this as services which help you do a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm going to call it do the boring stuff. Meaning that, in the end of the day, today, you still need a human to come take a look at the metrics that the models are spewing out, understand those metrics. So at a very high level, at a minimum, you need to understand how the model is performing and look at those metrics, and that requires a very good understanding of data science. And then at the next level, you also have this custom domain expertise that you spoke of, right? People have a lot of domain understanding, which the machine doesn't have. So you want to be able to use that domain understanding in kind of tuning and tweaking and creating the right models just fit you right? And so you are able to do this all in a platform so that you can do multiple models. Now, generally, anybody who's done machine learning will swear by this. You can never create a good model without a lot of experimentation. It's not one of those things where you can just write a program, click compile and you're done, right? You actually have to experiment with 10, 15, 20 models to get things right. And services like Abacus kind of ground you on a use case, but it also helps you experiment rapidly. And for that, you have to have a very good foundation of the fundamentals. So yes, definitely we have we have a need for data scientists, but we basically 10x your ability. So think of it as a 10x tool. So instead of you having to solve 2 problems, now we're going to be able to solve 20 problems. The second aspect of this is let the machine do what it can do, right? Always think of things that you can do, which the machine cannot do. So there are so many things which we haven't solved today. In any good way in AI. AI is really, early today. So there's so much to do there. So, there's that as well. So outside of these use cases, you can think of a lot of different ways in which your data science experience will be very helpful.
No, I love it. I love these two things resonate so well with what we talk about at Great Learning, which is that look, let the machines do what they can do and what they are going to be far better than us, right? Which is being able to just crunch the numbers, do these predictions on large amounts of data. However, what does that mean for you? Does that mean our jobs are obsolete? No, absolutely not. What somebody still needs to understand, first of all, you need to have the domain expertise. Bindu mentioned about how, let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of experimentation that needs to go in before Bindu showed those awesome predictive graphs around, what can happen, whether to customer churn or sales, right? But while these tools are there, think of them as these great calculators on steroids. You need to know how to use that calculator, right? You need to know,
Absolutely.
need to do your experiments, need to interpret the data. I think she mentioned about, being able to use your domain to interpret the data and get from data to insights. And I think more importantly, get from those insights to making decisions, right? And the computer is not going to make the decision for you. It's going to show you, here's what we predict based on these scenarios, but it's your call to make. And building
Yeah.
that judgment requires having that foundational knowledge, right? And that's what we emphasize in our programs. And again, I would encourage you, if you all want to know, to go to mygreatlearning.com. Um, you can also email us, but that's the whole thesis behind getting some great faculty, such as faculty from MIT, who would teach these very foundations of what of data science, helping you understand how to apply it in various use cases, and then of course providing pointing you to tools such as what Bindu and team are innovating on, so that you don't have to build that hammer from scratch. You don't have to build that nail from scratch. What you do need to know, though, is how to hold the hammer. You do need to know how to hit the hammer. And most importantly, you definitely do need to know where to hit the hammer, right? And that is what data science, a good data scientist knows and has, that kind of fundamental knowledge. Um, Bindu, there was a question, I think, from Amuda here, Amudan
Yeah.
here, about as you're using these various APIs, and as you abstract AI as a service, how do you? It becomes more and more of a little bit of a black box, that okay, I'm calling this awesome service and it's doing this amazing thing. I saw on Abacus.ai, by the way, my kids had a blast. Just so you know, they would upload their photo images of their picture, and they would make Abacus.ai, make it show what my son would look when he's,
All right.
50 years older, right? Which is funny. It also made it talk and so on, which is crazy actually. But what made me think when I looked at all that, and I think that's what even Amudan is bringing up here, is how do we validate these models? How do you know the accuracy of it? Any thoughts there, Bindu?
Yes, of course. So this is actually one of the reasons we've built Abacus the way we've built it, is exactly to address that question. So this is not meant to be this black box type service at all, and that's why I showed you some of those screens where you could actually dive deep and like change what the model, what the actual model makeup is. Like you can change learning rate, you can change batch size, you can set up your own loss function, but you can also evaluate a model, right? So at all times you have like this almost live evaluation of how the model is performing, what the accuracy is. And that's when I showed you that those few metrics. So if you dive a little bit deeper, there is a lot of transparency in there. So you can actually see how is the model performing? How did it do in terms of error rates? Let's think about a simple model like forecasting, right? If you're forecasting something in the future, when the future happens, you know whether your forecast is right or wrong. For example, we can say, hey, Trump is going to lose. We'll know for sure in November whether he's going to lose it or not. You know whether your forecast is right or wrong. So very similar to that, all these models have like ongoing evaluation and metrics that we have to get right or wrong. As the data comes in, we're able to monitor the model, we're able to see how good it is, we're able to evaluate it. More so, let's say you said, hey, I don't like what this model is doing. I want to be able to change this, or I want to be able to switch this off, or I want it to like consider that. So you're able to do that inside of Abacus, right? Not only is it going to give you a place where it's going to give you what I call a baseline, the machine will generate a model for you, but then you can improve on that baseline. So as a data scientist, you can say, I want this to change in this way, I want this to be tuned in that way. So you want to be able to actually move all of these parameters to get to the accuracy, get to the performance that you want. Another classic example of this very similar thing, if you guys understand things like area under curve, so maybe in a little bit like technical here, but you can actually kind of like move the parameters to like adjust your precision and recall, right? And that's what a data scientist does, and Abacus allows you to do that really easily.
Great. No, so I think the key here is, yes, everybody wants to know what's under the hood, And I like the philosophy that Abacus is following, which I think is the right one, which is that, look, the key here is transparency, right, around what is happening. So providing transparency around, look, here's what the model did, and here's how it's performing. And the second key is continuing to test it as more and more data comes and tweak it, right? So as ongoing data comes, you keep reevaluating your prediction. And I think once you have these two, you get a sense for, all right, now I know what's exactly happening under the hood, right? When I give it a certain kind of data, here's how it performs. When it gives another kind of data, it performs differently. So this is great. And on that, this part around being able to tweak the models. A question has come up, I think, so I'll try to compile the questions from a couple of them, which is, people just, I think, more from an entrepreneurial point of view, folks had, Harsh had a question around, well, so I like what I see here, and I think, I think Nokulunga talked about how they would like to apply it to a certain process in their industry, in a certain business process. And I think the question is, where do I start? So, should I start looking at the customer-facing front-end processes in my business to see if I can apply AI as a service there, or is it more on the back end, where the operations happen? So, any thoughts there for budding entrepreneurs, Bindu, on where would they start looking in their company's workflows to see where they can apply AI as a service?
Yeah, I would consider. I always tell my customers and anybody whom I speak to look at three things. The first thing you want to look at is, where is your highest kind of advantage, right? Where's the opportunity? So you're going to look at three things. You're going to look through your whole workflow, and you're going to say, here are, let's say, 10 places you can apply machine learning to. But where is it that you can apply today to get the highest lift in your key metric, right? Let's say that's revenue. So where is it that can is it in the front side where you can personalize somebody's experiences? Is it or is it in the churn side where you're preventing people from dropping off, right? So just look at that and say, where is the place where you'll have the highest lift, right? That's number one. Number two, where is the place where you have the most amount of data? Like it or not, anybody can say whatever they want to say. The most important thing about AI is it needs data, right? Generally, all models are data hungry. So where is the place where you have data and you can easily get to the data? So you want to tick that. So where is the metric? Then the second thing is, where is the data? And the third is, how easily can you apply that model? Right. So even if you can say, hey, I by doing, say, churn reduction, I'm going to get the most amount of lift. Let's assume that you thought that I'm going to work on user churn because that's what you think was high value. Then you said, I have the data, I know how to get the data, and I know how to create the model. But now, how do I apply the model? Do I have an email system which I can use to where if the model identifies the users which are being churned, can I now plug this information into my email system and give those users a promotion, engage them, try different ways in which you can re-engage them and get them going again, right? So these three things are the things you want to really think about before going off and choosing what your first project or where to apply AI. And at some level, you also want to consider clearly the cost of doing this. This is where we come in. So like a shameless plug here, if you were to do this all by yourself, it'll obviously take you a long time. You don't get to see the ROI quickly. Use something like this, it's much faster.
Yep. No, I love that. I love that the way you put this, a 3-point framework here, guys. So what's the metric you're trying to solve for? Where is the which part of your workflow has the most amount of data, right, that you can work with, and can you apply that model there, right? And if you use this blueprint. And absolutely, by the way, Bindu, I wouldn't call it a shameless plug at all, because I've seen firsthand when I was at Qualtrics, we had put in the time to invest in building a lot of AI algorithms from scratch. Of course, back then, we did not have these great AI as a service tools ready for us to use. And I can tell you that it requires, a lot of effort, time, PhDs in the making to get it all together. And we are all so much better off if we can use these tools, right? Because that's not the end. These are a means to an end. And let's build on these tools and focus on the domain where we want to innovate. And thanks for sharing, your blueprint for how to think about where in your company you can innovate. Again, a lot of questions just pouring in around. Sarat is asking about, can I apply it to the stock market? Somebody's asking, how do I apply it along with, for Rohan is asking about applying it for climate change. So, I wish you could go through it one by one and ask and just brainstorm how we could apply AI as a service to your domain. But here's what we can do. Again, that's what we cover in our programs, where we essentially get you to do hands-on work, right? To apply these very AI as a service tools, right, to your domain. And that's where the magic really is, to apply it to an actual business problem. And that's what we focus on. So I would encourage you all, if you're interested, irrespective of what domain you are in, what I'm seeing from my vantage point is AI is touching pretty much every single one of these domains that I'm seeing pour in here. Please reach out to us at programs@migrate-learning.com if you want to learn more on how to do that for your respective domain. With that, though, we have time for, just probably one other question. And I'd love to take this. So maybe I'll just have this one quick question, and then we can go to the last one. So Togiti is asking a question. I'm seeing all these awesome things like GPT-3 and BERT, and they're doing all this mind-boggling stuff. Is this something that you have that you're planning on, that you already have, maybe, or you're planning on incorporating in Abacus?
Yes, for sure. I mean, we don't right now deal with language or vision, language or images at the moment, because we focused initially on tabular data. As you know, we have a very customer focused, pretty customer obsessed. Most organizations have tabular data in databases, so that's why the focus for tabular data. But we're soon coming up with a whole range of use cases for language and a range of use cases for images, right? And yes, GPT-3 and BERT are really cool and very interesting, but we will be focusing on how to apply language models in real life scenarios, and potentially, building our own versions of those. But yeah, definitely coming. It's coming in the works.
Awesome. And Bindu, maybe one final question. This is, people are, so some of them have also commented that, you got a fantastic background. And like this particular one from, Nokulunga, he's asked, he says that, look, I'm an aspiring data scientist. I have a certain domain expertise, not a big technical background. I don't come from a technical background. And I'm looking to start up as well in data science. And then you, of all people, have started time and again, not one, not two, but many entrepreneurial ventures in the field of AI. So any advice, Bindu, just from your experience, from the world that you've seen of how entrepreneurs are innovating in the space, any advice, any parting advice for these budding data scientists who may not necessarily have a strong technical background yet, and looking to do something entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I want to say is, look, backgrounds in some ways actually may be negative. So think of it that way, because people who have a lot of experience have experience bias. So, we tend to kind of be informed too much about our past. So some of the best entrepreneurs actually don't have that much background, right? If you look at Zuckerberg, he wasn't like some big specialist in social media. So that's one thing to remember. A lot of the entrepreneurs are really, some have lots of potential, but don't have that much experience. The second thing to remember, especially in AI, is it's very easy to be taken by the word AI and very easy to be like, oh my God, there's something magical there. But I think it's important to be very grounded in terms of in terms of understanding what problem are you solving. So in general, in business, regardless of the kind of the science and the research and the fun stuff, at the end of the day, you have to be generating a lot of value to your customers to be able to create a good business. So when you're thinking about starting something or creating an entrepreneurial venture, think about other than the obviously, what technology you're going to use, what's the science you're going to put into put into use. Think about what's the um, business case and how you can uniquely generate value to fulfill that business case. Like what is it that you're going to be doing which will be really not just value generating, but also to some extent defensible, because those are the two things I feel like entrepreneurs kind of trip up on sometimes. How do I generate value, and how do I keep that value generation machine going?
Great. No, this is great advice. And, folks are also kind of adding questions around that, around, well, so what should I be studying? So this is again, given that we are out of time, almost out of time, we have questions from Rohan, from Anil on, what can I study to get started? Please reach out to us. We are more than happy. We have our counselors who are AI machine learning experts who are practicing in the industry, who can counsel you on what's the best program that might help you get off to the races, right? And as Bindu said, it's not. Don't think of AI as this this esoteric thing where very few people can figure it out, and for the rest of us it's out of our reach. It's not that. It's a tool. We are here to demystify AI, right? That's what Bindu's doing as well. She's demystifying it. You don't have to know how some complex predictive algorithm is exactly working. You don't have to build it from scratch. She's abstracted that for you. Where the real value is going to come is if you can apply it to your business, to your systems. So with that, Bindu, I wish we could have talked for much longer. People are still continuing to flood my chat with more questions. Having said that, I really appreciate you taking your valuable time, because you guys are off to the races with some amazing work that you're doing. And I can only imagine, or rather, I can't wait to see you guys ring the bell next very soon on Wall Street. So with that, Bindu, I just want to tell you on behalf of everyone else who's been listening in and who's been conveying their gratitude as well for your insights. Thank you so much. Yeah, and
Thank you.
we just wish you all the very best in your new venture.
Thank you as well, and good luck to everyone. I think we're just getting started in this big AI journey, and you guys are actually coming in very early, which is great news. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Bindu. Bye now.